Hello everyone and welcome back to Simply Mad. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing type 1 versus type 2 diabetes mellitus. And by the end of this video, you should be able to clearly distinguish type 1 from type 2 and understand why these differences exist and appreciate how they can influence patient management and clinical practice. But before we compare type 1 and type 2, these two conditions, let's first understand what diabetes mellitus is. So diabetes mellitus is basically a group of metabolic disorders. Diabetes mellitus is basically a group of metabolic disorders that are characterized by persistent hyperglycemia. So this means that there is an abnormally high concentration of glucose in the blood. So this hyperglycemia results from one, it could be defects in insulin secretion by the beta cells of the pancreas, or could be possibly caused by defects in insulin action. It could also be caused by defects in both. So to understand diabetes, we first need to understand the normal role and function of insulin. Let's go through it quickly. Whenever we eat carbohydrates, they are broken down into glucose in the bloodstream. So whenever there is consumption of carbohydrates, they're going to be broken down into glucose by the digestive tract. So this glucose is absorbed into the bloodstream, causing the blood glucose levels to rise. So this is going to be absorbed. It causes blood glucose to rise. Yeah. So in response to this, in response to the increased or significantly heightened blood glucose levels, then comes the pancreas. So the beta cells of the pancreas, especially those located within the islets of Langerhans, they're going to release a hormone called insulin. Yeah. So insulin facilitates the uptake of glucose. So insulin is going to act directly here. Yeah. Remember, the end goal is to reduce the level of blood glucose. So insulin is going to increase the intake of glucose into the insulin sensitive cells. So more glucose is going to now be transported, or rather absorbed, from the blood into the insulin sensitive cells. So now these includes maybe skeletal muscles. It also includes adipose tissue. So once the glucose is inside the cells, glucose is either used immediately to produce energy or stored as glycogen for future use. So this results in what? Decreased levels of blood glucose. Yeah. So insulin also suppresses glucose production. So this is the first role. The second role of insulin, it suppresses glucose production. So it also suppresses glucose production by the liver and promotes fat and protein synthesis while inhibiting that breakdown. So without adequate insulin, or if the body cells fail to respond to this insulin properly, glucose remains in the bloodstream instead of entering the cells. So as a result, blood glucose levels continues to rise while the body cells are deprived of their main source of energy. So there is glucose, but it's just in the blood and it's not being able to be taken into the cells and be used for energy production. This is a fundamental problem in diabetes mellitus. Now let's go on to look at the classification of diabetes. So diabetes mellitus can be classified into several major categories. Let's begin with type 1 diabetes mellitus. So type 1 diabetes mellitus, it's basically an autoimmune. It's an autoimmune disorder. So in susceptible individuals, the immune system mistakenly recognizes the pancreatic beta cells as foreign and progressively destroys them. Remember how we just talked about the beta cells of the pancreas being responsible for producing insulin that is necessary in regulating the glucose levels in the blood? So their destruction here leads to an absolute deficiency of insulin. So notice this term, absolute. This results in an absolute deficiency. Now we ought to underline this. This means that the pancreas eventually produces little or no insulin at all. As a result, glucose cannot effectively enter the insulin dependent tissues despite being abundant in the bloodstream. So consequently, the blood glucose levels rises while the body cells become deprived of energy. So there we have glucose in the bloodstream, but because we don't have insulin, which allows the glucose to enter the insulin dependent cell skeletal muscles, as we just mentioned, then there is going to be a significantly higher glucose level in the blood and low glucose levels in the cells. So basically the cells are stuffed. So then the body interprets this whole state as a starvation. Now let's look at what happens. Due to this starvation, the body then tries to compensate. So in this compensation, it begins to break down fats. The body begins to break down fats and muscle stores. So the fat breakdown releases free fatty acids that are transported to the liver, where they are converted into ketone bodies. So these ketone bodies, let's talk about them. Ketone bodies can serve as an alternative source of energy. However, when it is produced in excessive amounts, they accumulate in the bloodstream, lowering the blood pH and resulting in what we call diabetic ketoacidosis. So the diabetic ketoacidosis is one of the most serious acute complications of type 1 diabetes and constitutes of like an emergency, medical emergency. So now let's look at it. The exact cause of type 1 diabetes mellitus remains unknown, but several factors contribute. Let's look at factor number 1. There is a strong genetic predisposition, particularly involving certain human leukocyte antigen or HLA genes, as they usually call them. Could be also due to environmental triggers. Now, what does that mean? Especially viral infections, for example, such as the Cox B virus, are believed to initiate the autoimmune processes in genetically susceptible individuals. So other autoimmune diseases, including Hashimoto, thyroiditis, Graves' disease, celiac diseases, Addison's disease, are also more common in patients with type 1 diabetes mellitus. So we're going to go quickly through the clinical presentations or clinical features of type 1 diabetes. So in here, the patient usually presents these symptoms in early childhood or adolescence, although type 1 diabetes can occur at any age, which we're going to discuss later. So first things first, it usually presents in childhood or adolescence. Symptoms develop also rapidly. There is a sudden onset of symptoms over days to weeks. So here also the body cannot make insulin. Now also there is a classic presentation. There is a classic clinical presentation, which I would like for us to call the 3Ps. So let's look at these 3Ps. The first one is polyuria. Polyuria meaning excessive urination. There is also 2, polydipsia. Polydipsia. This is due to the fact that the body is already losing a lot of water in urine. So this is due to the fact that, the body is trying to reduce the heightened or high levels of blood glucose in urine. So now, as you know, that results in osmotic diuresis. So now polydipsia, this is the body responding to an excessive loss of water through urine. Then thirdly, we have polyphagia. That means excessive hunger. So despite eating more here, the patients often lose weight because glucose, remember, cannot enter the cells, forcing the body to metabolize fat and muscles. That is, there would be fat breakdown, there would be muscle breakdown, which usually results in significant loss of weight. So other symptoms include fatigue, blurred vision, dehydration, and generalized weakness. So now let's go on and look at type 2 diabetes mellitus. So unlike type 1 diabetes, type 2 is not primarily caused by lack of insulin. Instead, the initial problem here is insulin resistance. So, insulin resistance refers to a reduced biological response of target tissues to normal concentrations of insulin. So, in simple terms here, the insulin is present, but the body cells do not respond to the normal significant amount of insulin. So initially, so that is to say, the pancreas is able to produce insulin at first, but the body cells are not being able to respond. That is, it ends up resulting also in a state of hyperglycemia. Too much glucose in the blood, but cannot enter the cells because they are not being sensitive to the insulin that allows or facilitates entry of the glucose into the cells. So the pancreas initially compensates this because, yeah, there is a heightened level of glucose in the blood, but the cells are starving. So the pancreas initially compensates this by producing larger amounts of insulin. So now this first stage is called compensatory hyperinsulinemia. However, over time, the pancreatic beta cells become dysfunctional and are unable to maintain the increased demand for insulin. So eventually, insulin production significantly declines. Therefore, patients with type 2 diabetes develop both insulin resistance plus relative insulin deficiency because of this. So, unlike type 1 again, insulin is still produced. Insulin is still very much present, particularly during the early stages, but not in sufficient amounts to overcome the insulin resistance. That is, the pancreas is able to produce insulin at first, but the body cells are not responding. There is resistance. The pancreas then compensates by producing significantly higher amount of insulin, and then this leads to decompensation over time. Insulin levels decline, and then they're not being able to keep up or meet the insulin resistance. As such, there would be increased levels of glucose in the blood while cells are being stuffed. So the strongest risk factor for type 2 diabetes mellitus is obesity, specifically central obesity. So other important risk factors include advancing age, lack of physical activity, unhealthy dietary habits, and a family history of diabetes, also hypertension, dyslipidemia, and certain ethnic backgrounds. So let's go over look at the clinical features of type 2 diabetes. So the symptoms gradually develop over months or even years. That is to say, there is a gradual onset of symptoms, unlike type 1 diabetes, which is very, very, very acute and which is very fast. So now many patients remain asymptomatic and are diagnosed during routine health screening. So when symptoms occur, they commonly include polyuria, polydipsia, fatigue, blurred vision, and recurrent urinary tract infection. Why is it so? Because, there is a significant loss of glucose in the urine, and that environment on its own, it's a very good environment for microbial proliferation and growth. There's also slow wound healing, peripheral neuropathies characterized by numbness or tingling sensations also. So the acute metabolic emergency associated with type 2 diabetes is hyperosmolar hyperglycemic state, or HHS, which is characterized by profound hyperglycemia, severe dehydration, and an altered mental status, but usually here without significant ketoacidosis. So that is it about type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. And thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to Simply Med, and share this video. And in the comment section, let me know which endocrine topic you'd like us to cover next. Until next time, keep learning and making medicine simple to remember.